one of the key tenets of behavioral interviewing is you are mining for skills and competencies in doing so in a way that kind of forces the candidate to describe what their actual skills and competencies are rather than letting them just wax poetic about how awesome they are, right? And so before we can even talk about behavioral interviewing and why that style of interviewing is so important, we first have to understand the purpose of the questions we're going to ask. What are these skills and competencies? What's your guidance when looking at someone's LinkedIn profile, their resume, an application, to understand what their current state is, and then develop a strategy for the interview? So this is tailored. This isn't the same conversation you have with every candidate.
Correct. And just to a certain extent, going back to compliance, of course, there are standard questions that we ask every single candidate, right? So we want to make sure that we're utilizing the job description and we're saying, what are the key competencies that we're looking for in this position? And we are developing questions that every single candidate is asked. And the reason for that is, yes, compliance, because we don't want to ask one candidate if they can work weekends and not ask another candidate if they can work weekends, right? Because that may be discriminatory for one person because they already stated they have kids, right? So, well, can you work weekends? Do you have coverage for those kids? You can see where you get into problems. But the other reason that we want to stay consistent is that we want to make sure that we are comparing our candidates to those competencies in a consistent manner so that we can compare one candidate to another. And those behavioral questions are the best way for you to ascertain how did Mike perform in his last position. Gives me the best indication of how Mike is going to perform in my position that I have. But without developing those questions based on your job description and the key competencies you're looking for, you're kind of operating in the dark. So you're setting up those questions in advance. Their resume will give you additional questions that will be unique to that particular candidate, right? Because everybody has their own resume. So we have core questions, and then we have questions that we're asking from their resume.
Right. So if I'm trying to build an organization, let's say I'm looking for a head of sales.
Right.
And I know that internally our product is, it's a new product. We're going to bring it to market. It's never been tested before. We're super excited about it, but this is an unknown thing, and this person's going to have to come in and build a sales team. Well, if I look at resumes and LinkedIn profiles, I could find a bunch of former heads of sales that are going to brag about their numbers. What did they produce? But the competency I'm looking for is someone who has gone from nothing to something, who's brought a new product to market, who's built a team, right?
Right, exactly. So you really have to dig deep into that job description. And, I'd maintain that, we do job descriptions with employers all the time. Your job descriptions need to be looked at every single year. And doing this exercise, Mike, might show the organization, whoops, we need to update that job description because it's not reflecting the key competencies, or there's a shift in our key competencies because it's a new position or the team has grown. The other things that I want employers to think about, and something that we go over certainly in interview training, is additionally, you want to prep for that interview is a very clear job preview for your candidates coming in. Right. So again, this might not speak to behavioral questions, but you want to give candidates a very clear explanation of what your position is going to be so that they can make the decision on their own to opt out of the position. It's going to save you a lot of time and heartache rather than interviewing them and lots and lots of times and then having them decide. Give them a good job preview. Make sure that your managers have an outline for what they're going to do for the interview, which is, this is what our organization is about. This is what the position is about. At the end of this interview, next steps are, because remember, We are marketing our organization. Whether this person takes the position, whether we offer them a job, we want to make sure that we are marketing our organization in the best light we possibly can every time we touch a candidate.
We probably won't go deeper there, but that's not to say it's not critically important. You and I we talked about exactly this in one of our recent shows, that in today's climate, with today's unemployment rates and the war for talent, make no mistake, you're selling them as much as they're selling you.
100%.
So, yeah. Okay. So, so you've got a good job description. From that job description, you understand what are the competencies required. So you're not just hiring a head of sales. Let's stick with this use case. So I'm not just hiring a head of sales. I need someone who has brought a new product to market as a skill. I need someone who has built teams from scratch, recruiting, training, onboarding from scratch. We'll just stick with those two. What would be some bad before we go to examples? Go deeper on the definition of what is behavioral interviewing. How is that different from traditional interviewing, and why is it so important? You started down that path, but go a little deeper for me.
Sure. So we are looking for the candidate to give me an example of when they exercised the key competencies that we're looking for. So what does this do? This does a couple of things for us, Mike. When we ask a question where the candidate has to give us examples, we're finding how they can think fast on their feet, how they can articulate. I'm going back to communication skills, right? So always. How they can articulate that example. What happens a lot of times when I'm asking a behavioral question, the person says, yes, I've done that many times. If I ask them, have you built a team? Yeah, I've done that a lot.
No,
that doesn't answer my question. Yeah. Right? So when we do our interviewing training, and what I want to impart to everybody today is, how do you dig deeper? How do you make sure that you are asking the question in the right way? And I would maintain that if they don't answer it the right way, you say, that's a great answer, but I'd like you to give me more detail and give me a specific example of when you displayed this behavior.
Yeah. So let's go back to the use case. I'm looking for a head of sales. I need someone with experience bringing a new product to market and building a team from scratch.